So you're a brand new agent and you just got your first listing. You can't reach your broker. You're part of a team. You can't reach your team lead right now. And that listing is ready to go right now and you're in a pinch. That's more than likely the reason that you clicked on this video. So if you are a Georgia real estate agent, your brother, your uncle, your favorite realtor's favorite realtor has you covered. In today's quick training video that I'm going to show you how to put together a listing agreement. Okay? So if you get value from this, if this helps you pick up that new listing, come back to the comments of this video, leave me a thumbs up, or consider allowing me to be your sponsor at the greatest brokerage this side of the Mason-Dixie. If you've heard a lot about eXp Realty and you just wanted to get an experience from someone who's really in the trenches actually closing deals, and I'm going to give you the actual form numbers. You'll want to write it down, but I'll also put the form numbers in the description of this video. I also want to encourage you to watch this video at a slower speed. But again, for this video, we're going to access the forms going through the regular FMLS website. But however you can get to this website, remind.com, that's going to be the way that you're going to go about it. All right. So in the website, you're going to simply go to your dashboard here. Then you're going to hover your mouse over to create transaction. It's going to give you 3 steps that we're going to walk through. It's going to ask you what type of transaction. This video is for a listing sale, so you'll click sale. It's already clicked by default. Then it'll ask you, please select which side you will be representing. Okay, we're doing a video on a listing agreement, so of course you will select the listing side. And I did do a video on how to write an offer. I will put that in the description of this video if you're representing the buy side and you need to know how to write an offer in Georgia. So once you click on the listing side, you'll click next step. You'll give it a transaction name, and we'll just call this listing. Then it'll ask you to type the address here. And as soon as you start typing an address, it'll start generating an address that's already listed in the MLS, which will hopefully be your particular listing, because if you're representing a seller, more than likely they bought that home. If it's not a brand new construction and you're representing, a new construction community, more than likely that home was sold through the MLS. So as soon as you start typing it, it'll generate that information here. You will not fill in a buyer's name because we're representing the listing side. So once you plug in this information here, the seller's name should generate right here. But if it does not, you'll you'll type that in here, and then you will click continue. All right. So again, this is going to be the fun part, and I'm going to give you all of the form numbers that you're going to need for this particular doing a listing agreement. So you just literally follow it to the T and you will be good as gravy. All right, so the first form that you're gonna wanna get, and the fastest way to find forms once you're in this page here, is to simply go to the search box up here. I'm gonna give you all of the form numbers. So these form numbers are gonna be the same across the board, whatever brokerage you're a part of. If you have a realtor board and MLS access, it should automatically pull the forms for your particular brokerage. But if you're an eXp agent, then as soon as you type the form numbers here, it'll automatically pull up the eXp branded paperwork. All right, so the first form that you're going to need as a listing agreement, as a listing seller, is form F101. So as soon as I type that in here, that is called the exclusive seller brokerage engagement. So you'll click that, and then it's going to automatically add it to your selections below. The second form you're going to need is going to be if the seller has lived in that home. This may not apply if you are dealing with an investor who they have just rented that property out to other individuals and they have never stayed in that home. But if they have actually lived in that home, then you're going to also need form F301. That is the seller's property disclosure exhibit. So you'll click that to add that there. And what that is essentially it gives you the opportunity to have your seller explain as much about the home that they're aware of. So that's what that form is. And the exclusive seller brokerage engagement gives you the legal right to represent that seller as their listing agent. So we'll walk through how to complete that, all these forms in a second. Now, the second form that you're going to need is F322. That is the community association disclosure. You're only going to need this form, guys and girls listening, if you live or if the seller lives in a community that has an HOA. So if they have an HOA or a community association, otherwise known as a community association, then that is the exhibit that they're going to need to complete, because they're going to need to plug in how much they pay per year in HOA cost, any specific areas that the HOA covers, such as lawn maintenance, all that jazz in the community. So that's what that disclosure is going to be for. Now, for my EXP agents, you're also going to want to include the affiliated brokerage, the affiliated business disclosure. So you'll simply type that in here, because there is no form number for the affiliated business disclosure. But this form is simply saying that as an EXP agent, and you can, again, skip past this if you're not with EXP, but if you'd like to join EXP, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to talk about being your sponsor. The affiliated business arrangement disclosure just indicates that you're making your client aware that certain vendors or certain businesses may have a connection to EXP. So it's just disclosing that. Now, if you're with another brokerage, they're going to have you sign some other type of affiliated business arrangement disclosure, more than likely. So if you just simply type that in, if that form is there for your particular brokerage, you'll see that plugged in there. Now, so we're going to add that here. And then a couple of extra forms that you may want to just throw in here is Form F219. Form F219 is the temporary occupancy agreement for seller after closing exhibit. What this is essentially if your seller needs to remain in the home for a period of time after closing. Again, this will be part of the listing conversation where you'll ask them, hey, do you need to remain in this home for any period after we close? And they'll let you know, what the situation is for your particular, for your particular client situation. So once we plug that in here, so if they tell you that they'll want to remain in the home, or it's a possibility that they'll want to remain in the home, it's a good idea to, at some point, you'll want to have them complete this with that type of information. And it's just good to kind of have that ready. And then another form, if you ever need it, is also, and you don't have to necessarily have the client fill this form out now, by the way, but if they explain to you that they will want to remain in the home after closing, maybe for a week or something like that, in order to get stuff out of the home, that's when you will have them complete this. And then of course the buyer has to agree to allow them to stay in the home. So this will be part of the initial offer. You may want to add this to the additional documents, such as, because there's certain documents that you'll put with the listing agreement paperwork that you'll want to share with the buyer's agent, which will be the community association disclosure, because you're going to complete this with your client, and then the seller's property disclosure is also going to be completed by your client. And you may want to throw this in there as well, just so the buyer's agent and the potential buyer is aware of that. Okay. Alrighty. And then these are pretty much all of the forms that you're going to need. So just to recap, you'll need Form F101, exclusive seller brokerage engagement. You'll need F301, seller's property disclosure, if the seller has spent any significant time in that home. F322, if there is an HOA, that's a community association disclosure exhibit. And then for EXP agents, you'll add your affiliated business arrangement disclosure statement. If your particular brokerage has an affiliated business arrangement form, they'll tell you how to plug that in there. And then again, if your client is needing to stay in that home for any period of time after closing, a temporary occupancy agreement for the seller will be plugged in as well. All right. So once you have all that completed, we'll click next. And now you can go through each document here and customize it to your liking. So we'll start with the seller's brokerage engagement. So you'll plug in this information here, address, city, state. Now the cool thing is that if there is an MLS number, once you type that in here, it will automatically generate the full address, the tax parcel ID number, all that jazz. You just have to type in the MLS number on the previous page when you're entering in the address information in order to do that. Now the legal description here, it just depends on how you decide you want to fill this in. You can either fill in a deed book page. You can find that information from tax records, land lot numbers. You can find that information by going on the tax records website. Or if you have a very specific exhibit that the seller has already provided, you can attach it as an exhibit here too. All this other information here is going to be relative to if this property is a condominium, so on and so forth. But if this is a single family home, then you'll check one of these 3 boxes and then fill it out accordingly. One quick thing to remember is that you should never leave anywhere blank on this document at all, if possible. You'll either put NA or things of that nature, but you'll never want to leave a section blank. All right, so here, section 2, listing price and listing period. This is where you'll plug in, whatever price you come up with based on your research and a conversation with your seller. This information should be based on comps, where you do your best as the real estate professional to help them come up with a good starting price. And then the commencement agreement date will be, the date that you plan to list. So if it's going to be a coming soon, whatever date you plan to list is what you'll put as the date here. And then when the end of this particular listing agreement, which is typically going to be 90 days, it could be 120 days, but typically you'll want to put 90 days from the commencement date as far as the ending date of the agreement. And then as far as the marketing, then you will indicate where your listing is going to be marketed. If you're in Atlanta, Georgia, and the surrounding areas, you'll put FMLS and GAMLS. Those are the 2 MLSs specific for Atlanta, but whatever part of Georgia you're in, whatever MLS that you feed into, if it's one or multiple, then you'll plug that information as well here. Then you'll indicate, when you'd like to begin marketing the property. This shall be the date when the property is first marketed to the public. Seller shall have the right upon notice to the broker to move this date up or back, but not more than X amount of days. So if you're going to do like a coming soon kind of situation, then again, that's the information you plug in here. All right, and then we go down to what your commission is going to be. Of course, as the listing agent in Georgia, typically it's 6% of the sales price is what you'll plug in this box here. If there's some other agreed upon, commission, as far as a specific dollar amount, you'll put that here. But typically in the state of Georgia, it's 6% to the listing agent, okay? And then you'll also want to remember that 6% does not all go to you. That out of that 6%, typically 3% is split with the buyer's agent. So you'll want to make sure that you are aware of that, okay? And again, there are some situations where the commission may be adjusted, things of that nature, but I'm just giving you guys a quick training on how to get through this and get this completed, okay? So any nuanced type of situation like, section C, D, or B, you'll want to have a conversation with your broker. All right, so as far as the protected period, this is the length of period that you as the current listing agent should be protected. I typically put 120 days here. So all that essentially means is that if for whatever reason, a buyer comes and looks at a property that you're the listing agent for, and then the seller decides they no longer want to work with you as the listing agent, they get another listing agent. That same buyer that looked at the property when you were marketing it comes back within, let's say 120 days or less, and they decide to put an offer on that home. This essentially, in my non-legal advice, this essentially gives you some level of protection over that commission, okay? Alrighty, and then the agency and brokerage, the following types of agency relationships are not offered by the broker. You'll just double check with your particular broker what should go in this box here. And if the broker does offer dual agency, then you'll let your seller know, and make sure that they're okay with that, and then provide the needed disclosures, okay? And all that essentially means is you as a listing agent, if you're with EXP, for example, and then the buyer that's coming to tour your client's home they have an agent. That agent's with EXP. You just want to make sure, or Keller Williams, and you're with Keller Williams, whatever the case is, you'll just want to make sure that, your seller's okay with that beforehand. If the home was built before 1978, then it may require a lead-based paint disclosure. So you'll just complete this section here, depending on if it was built before or after 1978. If it was built after 1978, then you'll check the appropriate box here. If it was created before or built before 1978, then you'll check the correct box for that. Okay. If there are any special circumstances, you'll plug all that in here: bankruptcy, divorce, other things of that nature. Now, if you are an agent and you're, let's say, married to the seller, and you and your spouse own a property, then that's where you'll kind of put that type of information here. If you yourself are, part of the deed and you're listing the home for sale, then you'll put that, type of arrangement. The listing agent is married to the owner, or whatever, or co-owner is a licensed agent, whatever information is special here. But if any of these apply, that's what you'll plug in here. Okay. Section here where it talks about negotiation: seller does or does not authorize the broker to assist. Again, most individuals will say, they do authorize the broker to assist to the extent requested by the seller in negotiating terms and filling out pre-printed form contracts for approval. Most of the time it does, but again, that's a nuanced situation. Then here's some more disclosures here. You can go through that on your leisure, and then you'll go all the way down and check the appropriate brochures that you need to provide to your client if it applies. Again, if there's a home was built before 1978, if ABCs of agency, what that means, sub-agency, dual agency, all that jazz, anything that applies here, you'll need to provide the brochure to your client along with this listing agreement. And then you will plug in your seller's information, and you'll simply click people here. And that's where you can plug in your seller's information, their email address, and then it'll automatically populate here for them to e-sign. And then, of course, once it has been received, signed by your seller, then you will plug in the time and date that you received the signed document from your seller. And now you have a listing agreement completed for the seller. All right, next thing we want to take a look at is the properties disclosure, seller's property disclosure exhibit. This is, again, the information where your seller will complete, to the best of their knowledge, all of the information about the home, what year the home was constructed. If they know, if the property is vacant, they'll check yes or no, all that jazz here. If the community is subject to any kind of, covenants, deed restrictions, all that jazz, you'll plug that in here. Lead-based paint, if the home, again, was constructed prior to 1978. And if there is any additional information, you'll just plug that in here. And then these are all general questions. Has there been any settling movement? These questions here, your seller needs to sign and complete. You cannot answer any of these questions for your seller. They have to complete this to the best of their knowledge. Has any part of the HVAC been replaced during their ownership? They should know that. Date of last service, if they have an AC company they worked with, they can provide that information or call that AC company, because the AC company, HVAC company, would know the last time they serviced that unit. And then, of course, water heater, if the home is on public water, well water. If the home is on septic tank, you'll plug that in here. When it was last serviced, you'll plug that in there. As far as your seller will plug that in there. All right. And again, they'll answer all of these questions to the best of their knowledge. Age of the roof. If they've never changed the roof, then it's safe to assume that the age of the roof is the age of the home. If they are the first owner and they have never changed that roof. If they did get any repairs done, again, you'll plug all that in here. If there's been flooding, any issues with landfills or graves being near the home, termite information, if they currently have a bond in a termite company that they work with, they'll plug all that information here. If there's a cost to transfer, they'll plug all that there. If there's a bond in place, they'll plug all that in here. Any environmental questions, litigation, insurance, agriculture, again, these are to be answered to the best of your seller's knowledge, okay? And then lastly here, everything that's going to stay in that home, aka survive closing, will need to be checked here. So if they're gonna leave the garbage disposal, which that shouldn't leave anyway, but garage door opener, kind of looking through here to see some things that typically are taken by the seller. So a refrigerator, if that's going to be taken by your seller upon closing, then you won't check it. But if it's going to stay, then you will check what's going to stay in the home. Now, a lot of these things here are pretty straightforward, like unused paint, I don't care about that, but you'll want to check or have your seller check everything to the best of their knowledge that they plan on leaving at the home. And what I do with my buyers is I always say never to assume, but anything that's nailed to that wall or screwed into that wall typically has to stay in the home. So for example, the TV mounts, of course they can take their TV, but the mounts that the TV was mounted to, if the TV is mounted, that would have to stay typically. So you'll want to check that box that, that item is going to stay. But if it's unchecked and it's something like, let's see here, I don't know if it's unchecked, but it's like a basketball goal. Well, you'll want to make sure by the seller and typically put it in writing. When a buyer's agent is writing an offer, they're going to put in there, that this offer is contingent on basketball post and goal remaining in the home, something like that. But again, typically washers and dryers are some of the main things that typically will leave upon closing. But if that's not the case, just make sure you check that box that it is going to stay. All right, and then you will have your seller sign this part, and then you will upload this item here. This particular form will be uploaded to the actual listing page, i.e. the MLS. If you're in Georgia, it'll be the FMLS website and or the GAMLS website, or you can put the documents into showing time as a document that a buyer's agent can download when they're ready to write an offer. So we won't go through how to do all that for this video. I'm just showing you how to get the listing agreement signed. The last few documents here, if the community has an HOA, and I mentioned in the previous slide here, this is where you'll plug in, again, this is the seller's property disclosure here. But if the community has an HOA, then you will plug in what type of HOA it is to the best of your knowledge, or your seller will, I apologize, the name of the association, the contact person, and they may need your help obtaining this information as far as your seller, but ultimately they have to be the ones to complete this because they're going to be bound by whatever they write on this document. So for example, if there is a total assessment of, let's say, $500 per year that they write on there, but they don't verify that assessment is going to remain the same through the calendar year, and or it's going to go up to $600 and they don't plug that in here, well, I've seen instances where that difference was deducted from the seller's portion of the sale, because it's their responsibility to make sure that they're giving accurate information. Okay, and if there are any special assessments, you'll plug that in here. And if the HOA, if there's a transfer fee, again, this is all information that you as the agent can help the seller obtain, but you cannot plug any information for them. Okay, so you can help them obtain it. You can even find out who the contact is and get on a 3-way call with your seller and go through this together on a Zoom call. But make sure that it is your seller that plugs in all this information based on them verifying with the community association. So if the HOA covers any of these areas here, you'll check that box, or your seller will check that box. If there's any maintenance costs that are included in the HOA and what exactly it's covered, you'll check that. If there's any pending litigation, aka your seller has not paid their HOA dues or they've had violations, they'll plug all this information here. If they've had a violation before, or if they've had pending litigation, they need to disclose that here, because a good closing attorney will find that out, and it's just going to turn into a nightmare for your seller client. Alrighty, so once they have completed all that, then you will add their signature here, again using the People tab. Once you plug in a person's name, a bunch of options will pull up here that they can fill in, use to either add a signature, all that jazz, edit a signature, so on and so forth. Lastly here, the affiliated business disclosure. That's where, again, that's specific to the particular brokerage that you're with. But if you're with EXP, then you'll plug all that in here. And then, as I mentioned, if the seller is requesting to remain in the home for a period of time, no more than 60 days as far as what you can use this document for. One more thing I forgot to add into this particular video is what to do with it once you have all of the documents ready to send off to your seller. So what you'll do as soon as you have that done, everything completed and filled out, what you'll do is essentially, let me share my screen here again. So when you have everything completed, you just double check your work, of course, and then you will click send to send it to your seller. You'll check all of these forms here because every form requires a signature, and you just want to make sure you go through all of your documents and make sure that you didn't leave anything blank, that you put NAs where it was not relevant, but definitely don't want to leave any of the major areas blank. So always double check yourself. And so once you select all the documents in the bundle, then it will give you some error messages, of course, because we did not fill out any of this information here because we didn't have an address, for example. You'll see a few error messages or error, symbols like this. But in your case, because you'll have all this filled out, this won't be here. Then you'll select next, and then here is where you will plug in the recipient here. Their name as your seller should already pop up here. So you'll just verify that you have the right email address for them filled in. I don't have a seller listed for this video, so that's why there's nothing here. But once you put in the seller's information, as I showed you in the previous segment, then you'll click send, and it'll automatically shoot an email to them with the information that they need to sign. So hope that helps. Again, if you got value, smash like button. I'll see you on the next video. Are you a real estate agent looking to jumpstart your career? Join our online agent network and gain access to the support and resources you need to succeed. One of the most effective ways to attract clients in this industry is through social media. And I can tell you, in my entire time as a real estate professional, I have not knocked on one door, and yet I've still generated several $1 million worth of sales per year. And our team is here to help you do the same thing. Click the link in today's show notes today or visit IamTheTribe.com to learn more about this amazing opportunity. Now back to the show.